Hi everyone, I think I'll up in a second if that's okay. Thank you so much for coming to Lighthouse tonight for this event. We are celebrating Common Ground by Elissa Soave, who will be in conversation with Gemma Neville. So we'll have a beautiful in conversation, and then at the end there will be an opportunity to buy the books, get them signed, and there will be some drinks and snacks as well. So please join me in welcoming them forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Gemma Neville. I'm an author, journalist, and perhaps like quite a few of you, a gardener, relevant for our conversation this evening.
I'm not a gardener.
I wondered, and I will come to that. I wondered. You've done a very good job of presenting. Well, I mean, what better time really to be discussing all things new growth and spring? I think we've made it through the worst of winter. Today was really something. So yeah, great to be out and great to celebrate the launch of Elissa Soave's latest novel, Common Ground. Publication day was last week.
Yes, last Thursday.
Grand. Well, hearty congratulations and welcome to the world, Common Ground. I think that deserves another clap. Thank you. The plan for this evening is I've got some questions, things I want to dig into. There'll be lots of that, dropping of garden metaphors as we go along.
That's went over my head actually.
I'll be checking in with Elissa about a few things, but I want to hear your thoughts too. So I will open up the floor, and we're joined by friends online as well this evening. So great. And you know that we're going to have a signing after our conversation's complete, and some drinks and snacks. So what could be nicer? Let me come to Elissa. So Elissa, you're the author of several previous novels. Ginger and Me was shortlisted for the Saltire Society First Book Award in 2023. And Graffiti Girls, published the year after. You won the inaugural Primadonna Prize in 2019.
Yep.
And your writing, plays and short stories have appeared in various journals and anthologies, including New Writing Scotland, Gutter magazine, and the Glasgow Review of Books. Elissa is at home in South Lanarkshire, so welcome to Edinburgh this evening. And that's the ground in which we will bring our spades and our secateurs to unpack all that's in Common Ground. It's a story of community activism, how appropriate to be at Lighthouse this evening for the launch. It's a love letter to community spaces, following the unlikely friendships that form between plot holders at Kenmar Allotments in Uddingston. When the local council announced their plans to turn the allotments into luxury housing, the plot holders and local community rally together to save the space that's become a sanctuary for fractured souls. And I think for me, reading it, it's really about a quiet sense of possibility. So that's what I am taking. But Elissa, you begin by telling us, what was your inspiration for the book?
Well, I can remember exactly when I got the idea for the book, actually. A friend of mine took me to our local community allotments, and I'd never been to allotments before. I didn't even really know what they were. And I was really quite taken with them, this idea that you could have a little plot of land, and on each plot there was everybody had their own shed, a wee personalised space. And I remember thinking to myself, my goodness, what a great setting for a novel, because anything could be happening behind those shed doors. But I think in terms of the themes of the novel, it really continued my interest in community. That was one of the themes of Ginger and Me, where Wendy, who's neurodivergent, was desperately trying to get involved in our local community, trying to find her way in, and wasn't able to do so, or found it very difficult to do so. So in this novel, again, I'm looking at themes of community and, as you say, community spaces.
Great. Well, why don't you give us a reading, and we'll hear more, please.
Okay. So I often find when I go to book events and authors read, from the first few pages of the novel, just often it doesn't really work for me because I feel as though, even when you're reading a novel yourself, it takes a few chapters, doesn't it, to get into it? So one of the things I'm sure we'll come on and talk about is this is a novel all about relationships between people that you might not expect to have a relationship. So rather than sort of read you from the start of the novel, I'm just going to read you a wee sort of standalone scene between two characters, and you can get a sort of a flavour of these characters and the sort of things that you would be reading about in the novel. So this is between two characters called Stanley, who's almost 80, and a wee boy called Isaac, and they develop a sort of an unlikely friendship. Need my glasses.
Take time. I'm going to pour us some water while you do that.
It was late morning, the sun hard and bright, when the boy finally sidled over to Stanley's allotment. Stanley had been busy with his potatoes all morning. He glanced over at the boy every so often, wondering what he was doing there on his own. His scrawny legs were curled up under him in the cold step. He'd been staring at Stanley from under his ginger fringe, the ever-present electronic device balanced on his knee. He tried to remember what Karen had called him when she told him a new family was coming. Isaac, was it? A decent name anyway, not Jaden or Max or Rocky, whatever they called children these days. Shouldn't you be at school, he said, shielding his eyes from the sun and looking down at the boy. Isaac held up his tablet. I learn more from this than I do at school. Stanley looked at the boy with interest, since he was equally sceptical about the benefits of reciting times tables or learning capital cities by rote or any of the other useless things he'd been forced to do himself at school. Maybe so, but I don't think your mum would be happy if she knew you were skipping school, would she? Isaac sniffed and rubbed his nose with the back of his hand. You won't tell her, will you, mister? It's Mr. Seddon to you. The boy said nothing, and Stanley took in his pale face, with its dusting of freckles across his nose, cheekbones like knives, and bluish hands poking out from his shirt sleeves, fingernails bitten to the quick. But there was something about him that appealed to Stanley. His stillness, maybe. His willingness to sit still without indulging in the kind of chit-chat that Stanley detested. Are you hungry, lad? He said. Did you have breakfast? No. You got any sweets? It's not even midday yet, too early for sweets. What about some nice hot tea? OK. Isaac left the path and crossed through the middle of Stanley's allotment. Oi, what do you think the path's for? Stanley said. Mind my seatbeds. The boy ignored him and pushed open the door of Stanley's shed. He sat down while Stanley made the tea. Who's that old woman? Stanley turned to see Isaac pointing at a picture of Mabel, taken when she'd won second prize for the cha-cha-cha at our dance club. Less of the old, he said to Isaac. That's Mabel. She was only 67 there. 67? Wow. Stanley was about to tell him off for his cheek, but something about the way he sat there, open-mouthed and shaking his head at the impossibility of reaching such a grand old age, made him laugh. A real belly laugh like he and Mabel used to enjoy together. It occurred to him that talking to this boy was cheering him up. Isaac had transferred his attention back to his tablet. You should do something and spend all day on that thing. Like what? Well, like, you should get a hobby. What's your hobby? My hobby? Stanley was stumped. The truth was, apart from spending all day in his allotment, he'd done nothing much at all since Mabel had died. She'd been the one who signed him up to things. She was the one people warmed to. She hadn't minded chatting about the small stuff. She was interested in everyone's kids, their grandkids, their sick relative. People's lives, Stanley should say. What's more important than that? He'd stopped going to their Thursday morning coffee club at the church because it was hard when everyone kept asking him how he was coping after Mabel. And worse if they didn't mention her, because then it was like she'd never existed at all. He'd even stopped going to his Tuesday afternoon chess club, and he'd loved that. My hobby's playing chess, he said. Would you fancy a game one day? Might keep you off your iPod thingy for a bit. Isaac shook his head. Ach, no. Why would you want to play with an old man like me? I understand. Don't worry. It's not because you're ancient. Good to know, said Stanley. No, it's because I don't know how to play. Don't you ever play with your dad? Isaac snorted. My dad can't play chess. He couldn't, even before. He gripped the arms of the comfy old chair. He's useless. Stanley put the kettle down. Don't say that, lad. I'm sure he loves you very much. The boy shifted, folding his arms tightly. You know, it's not that hard to play chess. I could teach you if you want. The boy brightened. If you like. I'll be rubbish though. I'm rubbish at everything. Stanley brought over the tea. We'll see, shall we? Here you go. Thanks. Got any biscuits?
Thank you. Thank you. You read that well. Uddingston is your home, isn't it?
Yes,
so
it is, yeah.
The diction and
Yeah.
the oratory is yours.
Are you saying I'm not posh Edinburgh?
No, I'm saying the world goes round with tea and biscuits, and, and we like that too over here. I mean that reading with Stanley and is very much and Isaac is a growing friendship with young and old and as you say relationships of many different surprising kinds are at the heart of this book, and yet they're both alluding to the woman in their life. Stanley's ex-wife and Isaac's mother is a big character in the book as well. It seems to me that women are, and particularly I can say this as a middle-aged woman myself, are often at the heart of local campaigns, the driving force that then bring the men folk and the boys with them. Do you think that's fair? And is that something you've noticed as well? Because you've written a lot about women at that stage in life as well in your other books.
Yeah, it's not so much that I made a conscious decision that the campaigners in this novel were going to be the women. It's more that I think women at that sort of age, of my sort of age, in their 50s, there's this tendency to think that, you know, by that stage, you know, we've to back away delicately and, you know, we've got nothing more to offer. And I really, in this novel and also my previous novel, really want to make the point that, you know, women of my vintage, any women, you know, we've got so much to offer, we've got so much potential. And I think it's not a surprise or an accident that the women who are at the heart of this campaign, you know, are these women like Germaine, like Dorothy, like Isabel, who are women in their 50s, who just get on and get things done. You know, they're not happy to say. So the point of the novel is the story behind the novel is that these allotments are going to close down, and there has to be a campaign to keep them open. And it's, as you say, it's the women who are at the heart of that, and just saying no, we're not going to allow these allotments to close down.
We'll not give any spoilers away, but as I said, it's a quiet sense of possibility that builds. We've mentioned Uddingston. You've come east this evening, and small towns. And Scotland is a nation of towns, are we not? That's a recurring theme as well in your work. You know, the infrastructure, the socio-economic fabric of a place, the gossip, the frustrations. So is that a conscious choice?
Yes, I think it is. I just don't have any truck with this idea. I know we're in the capital city, but you know, this idea that people who live in small towns it is somehow as... or often in literature, a small town is given as a place to escape from. You know, that's the sort of the spur of the novel. In my novels, the small town, yes, characters come from small towns, but it's a very positive thing. In my novels, the characters love being part of their small town. And I love being part of a small town, and I love writing about small towns. And you often hear people say things like, you know, in a small town, everybody knows your business. You know, I think that's true. But if, you know, like the characters in this novel, your business is that you are severely facially disfigured and you feel like an outsider and you want to fit in, then it's a good thing for people to know your business. Or if it is that you are a carer for somebody with early onset dementia and you need support, it's a good thing for people to know that. So I think in a small town, you're more likely to have this sense of community and this support that you can get from that than you are in a more anonymous big city. So for me, a small town setting, it's not somewhere to escape from. It's how can we be part of this small town?
The messy putting down roots that you describe. And talking about knowing each other's business, there's extracts in Common Ground that play with form. You've got, for example, some, I think it's community council minutes, and there's some extracts from social media and the campaigning, and obviously dialogue and press cuttings as well. So that must have been deliberate. Tell us more about your choice to put some of them to spice up the narrative.
It's really interesting because having been on the publicity trail for the book, and speaking to various people, you're about the third person that's asked me about this sort of mixed media, and honestly, I couldn't put it as strongly as I made the decision to do it. I just was really trying to use all the means at my disposal as a writer to communicate the story. And I think writers have always done that, haven't they? If you think about like Tolstoy and the letters between Vronsky and Anna, and but this is obviously a contemporary story, so I'm using contemporary media. But having been asked about it a few times, I have thought about it, and I think it's true that it does. Well, I hope that it does add something. If you think about, for example, the council minutes, they're written in very formal language, but actually they're leaving out a lot more than they're saying. So in terms of the council minutes, what they're discussing is dropping a bomb on the allotments, but you wouldn't know that from the minutes. Mm-hmm. And then if you compare that to something like, the social media posts that people make, these are much more immediate, aren't they? We make these posts, and we're not really thinking very carefully about what we're writing because we're expecting them to just sort of disappear. But you get a lot more of how people really feel from social media posts. Mm-hmm. And then there's a newspaper article which, the girl who wrote the article, she's got the facts all wrong. So that was an opportunity to add, a wee bit of humour to it. So I think all these different types of media, they do add different things to the narrative.
There is a lot of humour, lightness of touch, and my goodness, don't we need it with the world, the dark place that it is. So it, like spring itself, there's shoots of hope pushing through the ground throughout this. We've mentioned from Uddingston. Now I looked it up on a map. Viewforth Allotments is a real place, isn't it?
View Park.
View Park. And
yes.
So you tell us about that. What's real, and also that you're not a gardener. That's very confessional in this space. We'll change that. We'll have you in. But tell us about how did you come to be? I know you had your friend at the allotments. But there's a lot of dialogue, so we eavesdropping.
So I like to write
sneaking around these plots.
No, I wasn't really sneaking around. Well, maybe I was a bit. View Park Allotments is a real place, and originally I called them the View Park Allotments, and I thought, I don't know if I can really do that. So I've changed the name to Kenmar Allotments. But if you'd ever been to View Park Allotments, you'd see that this is what I was describing, and I just think it's a fantastic place. But interestingly, and life mimicking fiction, those allotments have now shut down just as lack of funding, and I just think that is a dreadful, dreadful thing. I mean, there's a character in Common Ground who says something along the lines of, the allotments, they supply food for the food bank. They host nursery groups and school groups coming in for visits. They're basically at the heart of everything that is good in a community, and that's what we're shutting down. So that really made an impression on me, and I was very keen in the novel to talk about why we need community spaces, because I think we do. I think there's an instinct in all humans, most humans, that we want to gather. We want to gather together, don't we? And there's a need for a third space, i.e. somewhere that is not your home, it's not where you work, but where you can gather with other human beings. And if you think about, lots of us spend our time in coffee shops, and that's not for the coffee, that's because we want to be surrounded by other human beings. But I think that there should be spaces like that, preferably free, preferably very warm and welcoming, where people can go and can gather. And at our local church, there's after mid-morning mass, you can go across to the hall and have tea and coffee and toast. And every day you see people going across there. Now again, that's not for the free tea, that is for company, it's somewhere to be with other humans, and it's mainly older people that go. So it's a great thing. And I think it's really, really sad and not a trivial thing when these spaces are being cut. You know, they've been cut at they're under threat from all sides. You know, libraries are reducing, community centres are shutting down. And, you know, you could say that it's a small thing. It's not a small thing, because basically what we're saying then is, actually, it's okay not to have a men's mental health shed. It's okay that there's no libraries. It's okay if you can't afford to go and sit and drink expensive coffee. We as a society are happy. We're not going to bother with that. You know, it's not a small thing. It's a really, really big thing. And in Common Ground, the characters are very keen to say, we need this space. And, you know, when community works well, it's a very powerful thing. On Friday night, I did a sort of a wee launch event at the next in the next town along. It's at Bothwell Community Hub. Nice. And it was really great to be there, because that's a place, so Bothwell Library was shutting down, and the community said, no, we're not having this. And they all got together and raised funding, bought the building that the old library was in. The library is now housed there, as is a community cafe, book events like mine, baby yoga, you know, everything that is good in a community. So when people get together and act as a collective, it's a very, very powerful thing. And so I think, although we're there is this cult of individualism, isn't there? You know, it's work hard, earn as much as you can, and as long as you're all right, Jack. Yes, up to a point, but, you know, are we really happy that we're going to have a society where there's no community space? I don't think so. I think at some point we will say, no, we have to maintain these spaces.
Here. I think you'll find plenty of support for that in the room tonight. Here's to those so-called third spaces and non-commercialised third spaces at that. The book has, you know, through it the inherent, you know, the tension between private luxury, public amenity, and that when things are lost, they're lost, like you say. So it's quite poignant to hear about what's been happening in real life spaces. This is also where I disclose I've been on the Edinburgh Council allotment waiting list for 20 years, which is either a huge bureaucratic muck-up or it just typifies the problem we have with green space and commercialisation in this city.
And it's low priority, and that's what I mean when I say, I think people think, you know, the people making the decisions are often not the people who are actually using the spaces. So it doesn't seem like a big thing. We've got a wee community centre in Uddingston, the David Milne Centre, and it was closed down recently. And there was a furore about it, but anyway, it's still closed down. But it struck me that the people who are using that space, so it's people who've got dementia, you know, and carers can go in. They're not the same people who are making the decisions. And so the people that are making the decisions think it's a trivial thing, but it really isn't a trivial thing.
No, and it takes a certain confidence, doesn't it, to put yourself out there to vocalise and form a campaign. I should just also say I'm no longer living in Edinburgh before anybody gets uppity at the council. I have a meandering path that involved guerrilla gardening and communal garden spaces in between towns. But obviously I'm on board with what Kenmar residents got up to. I think I'm interested in the word amateur. You're touching there on the variety of activities people are hosting, you know, on the plots, and often that's, you know, we sort of downplay it. Oh, it's just a bit of gardening, and it's just DIY, it's just chess, it's just the community cafes. But of course, amateur means to love something, and to do it with wholehearted passion. You're not an allotment holder, but have you gotten a taste of Like, no, not even a window box or a sad basil plant.
No, I honestly could kill any plant, anytime, any place, anywhere. So my father-in-law was the person who was giving me advice on gardening, and honestly, we had some great laughs because I didn't know how little I knew about gardening until it was pointed out to me. So I had a scene where every single flower you can think. I wanted like a grand profusion of flowers. So I just googled loads of flowers and added them all to the scene. And my father-in-law had to point out to me, flowers do not all blossom at the same time of year, Elissa. So I
Someone tell Tesco's that. Yeah, they shouldn't blossom at the same time of year.
There's a character who really loves her sunflowers, and but I had them in full bloom and very tall at totally the wrong time of the year. So I had to be given lots of advice. So I'm not a gardener, but I will say that I am a big fan. No, I am a big fan of the outdoors. I love nature. I do love being outdoors. And it's quite a recent thing, really. Maybe a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have said that. I would have if somebody said to me, nature's healing, I would have just laughed and thought, oh God, it's new age nonsense. But a couple of years ago, I guess was as long ago as that now, I was diagnosed with quite a serious illness, and there was quite a long period through treatment where I couldn't really do anything, or I'd certainly talked myself out of doing anything at all. And it was put to me that really I should be going out and exercising once a day at least. So I'm quite lucky where I live in Uddingston. I'm right next to the Clyde. So there's a beautiful walk all through to the Clyde, right up through to Blothole Castle. And I started to do that every day. And honestly, I can't overstate the healing effect that it had on my health. Just looking at the water, looking at the trees, just really appreciating being outdoors. So I can't. The characters in this novel, who all have their own various issues, not always health problems, but various life issues.
As we all do.
Yes, exactly, we do. Yeah. I think that one of the things that really helped all of them, quite apart from this community that they're now part of, was just being outdoors.
Yeah, and of course it's not about horticulture, is it? It's about taking up space and doing so together. And
also maybe this idea of taking something and making it useful. So taking this plot and perhaps growing some tomatoes,
the sense of purpose.
Yes, and also I guess that as a side effect, being away from the distractions of your mobile phone, your computer screen, and all these sorts of things. So I definitely think that nature, gardening, being outdoors, I think these have all got a very healing effect on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also with the interdependency that we just as the plants are interdependent of one another, so are we as people of course, and that interconnecting relationships, because there's lots of types of pairings in this book. We've got the intergenerational friendships, we've got a romance, we've got neighbourly interconnection, and they're all kind of just, rubbing up against each other, and as we all do, but asking for help becomes a sign of strength. So I think it's time we heard another reading, and you're going to give us something, I think, about friendship as well. We've got a few you could choose from. Is that, we thought, we've got Kevin and Maggie, or...
Oh, I can't remember what page that was. I actually sort of changed my mind on that. Is that okay?
Of course it's okay.
So I just thought I'd read a wee bit about campaign starts. Is that
brilliant.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
After a sleepless night, Germaine was back at the allotments before even Stanley had set foot in the place. She dreaded the task that lay ahead of her, but she was still the manager here and showed it to the plot holders to give them the truth. The development plans were going ahead, the allotments would be closed down and sold, and there was nothing they or anyone else could do about it. She gathered them all round the entrance to the ferry. What about my Roddy? Stanley spoke first, pushing his bunnet to the back of his head as he did so. I've just planted tomatoes, from Kevin. But why? I don't understand. I thought we'd won, said Farah, her face crumpling. But we had a party to celebrate, from Lawrence. They can't do this Dorothy stamped her foot and glared at Germaine. I'm afraid they can, said Germaine, not meeting anyone's eyes. She spoke. And no amount of screeching and crying about it's going to change things. The decision's been made. The group was silent again, but remained huddled together, unwilling to let the matter end there. OK, said Dorothy finally in a calmer voice. That's what the council's told us. But we need to talk about this, make plans. What do you mean, said Kevin? The allotments are closing, aren't they? I thought that was the final decision. That's the case, I'm afraid, said Germaine. Nothing else to be done. And we've been down this road before, Dorothy. We did our best with the petition and everything. Did we, though? Dorothy pushed through the others to the front of the group. Can we really call a pathetic wee petition with 52? 54, said Germaine. Remember we stopped in at Greg's on our way to the council, and those two nice women signed it for us. Germaine, come on. 54, 94, 104, whatever. It's hardly Churchill telling them we'd fight them in the fields, or Yeltsin standing on that tank, or even Tommy Sheridan saying no to the bloody poll tax. I'm afraid you've lost me, Germaine sniffed, longing for the quiet and privacy of her shed. What I mean is, it wasn't a strong stand in the fight for justice. It was more like, I don't know, a wee hiccup or a half cry into the dark. Please don't take away our allotments. George mumbled. Exactly, George. Thank you, said Dorothy, as though he'd confirmed her point. What are you suggesting, said Germaine. A campaign. A proper campaign this time. Take action like we mean it. Like we won't be pushed aside while they knock down our allotments that we've worked so hard over. She was raising her voice again, and Germaine gestured to her to keep it down. Dorothy ignored her. These allotments belong to all of us. We've got to show them who they're dealing with. Lord, here we go, said Maggie. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Here we go. Dorothy gave her daughter a stony look before extending it to the whole group. Let's get going. Let's show them these are our allotments. For people like us who need them, damn it. They want a fight. Let's give them one.
And they do give them a fight. This is your cue in the room, and to friends joining us online, I'm going to come to you for questions in just a moment. While you're thinking about that, Elissa, why don't you tell us about what makes you hopeful? You've touched upon the crisis that we're in terms of public space, and then having loneliness that we all feel in navigating space as well. But I think you're quite a hopeful person. I can tell that from the lightness in your work too. Please give us some hope. Don't we need it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's life, isn't it? There's despair and there's hope. I think light does follow dark. And I'll tell you something, having a serious illness, there's nothing like it to come out of it and then think, life is good. Life is good. I'm just so happy to be here. I think there's loads to hope for. I mean, even in the book, the characters they're not giving up, and we can't give up. For me, the best stories are where there is humour, but often under the humour is where the tragedy is, and I think that is life. But we have to hold on to the humour, and we have to hold on to the hope.
Thank you. They've all got a backstory as well. Interesting. Okay, let me pause for a moment. So please put your hand up if you've got a question. I think our Lighthouse colleagues are going to come round with a mic. Were we sharing these ones, Grant? And also let me know if there's anything coming in from the live stream. And if not, I've got some more of my own. Yeah, please. Do you want?
I'll project.
Well, I'll repeat what you say so everyone hears it.
It's like in Graffiti Girls, you had this kind of tension between the kind of protests or the campaigning and the aims, and then they're worried that actually it's having a potentially negative impact on the community. Do you feel like you sort of returned, or you have different angle and common ground, or did you feel you had a similar feeling of? Was it an uncomplicated campaign, or
Okay.
you had that same tension?
Thank you. That's a great question. I will summarise in case anyone struggles to hear, and you can gather your thoughts as well. So if I'm understanding right, you're asking about potential complications or tensions within the community when a campaign is underway, And that's bringing up a theme from Graffiti Girls as well. Over to you, Elissa.
I mean, I think there is an inherent tension between individualism and collectivism, and undoubtedly, when people are campaigning for public spaces, there will also be those who will say, no, we, basically what they're saying is every man for themselves, right? So I think, I'm sure. So in Common Ground, the allotments have been closed down in order that the luxury housing can be built on that space. So of course there are people who would say, well, we want to make money. This is the best way to make money. These allotments are draining the council of money, and that is in direct opposition to what the campaigners are trying to do. But really, I mean, I just think when you consider what allotments and other such community spaces do for a community, particularly the local community, I think that's really, really hard to argue against. So my characters come out on top.
There's a gentleness to that grit, which is very, very effective. On grit, I meant to say the Scotsman Review, Fresh, has said it's the perfect antidote to dark nights and our current news cycle. And that's...
I'm really glad that you've pointed out that review, because let me tell you about another one.
Okay, stand by.
Which I thought was hilarious. So in my book, set on allotments, about allotments, the complaint was the word allotments was used too often.
Right. Well, synonym for allotments. Yeah. Let's pass over that one. Just spread some manure and dig in where you need to. Have we got any other questions just now? Things you want to share? Oh, a few hands.
I was going to say, so View Park has closed now in the actual allotments?
Yes.
View Park allotments
yeah.
in real life
Has
closed.
the book been sent to anybody who made that decision?
No. I know. I mean, there was a campaign over the summer, and I still think that, I mean, the ground is still there, but I mean, this is how bad it is. So when I had my children, initially, and we were in Uddingston, every year at the allotments, there's a fantastic big flower festival, and the whole community came. It was over 3 days. The whole community came. It was wonderful. I mean, it really was a great thing. That closed down first, so that tells you where we were going. Mm-hmm. It's just a question of priorities, isn't it?
Yeah. What's the local reception been like? You've written about that locus before, so you've not been run out of town, far from it. And in fact, did we not see a return of some characters? Jermaine, Wendy, Irish Mary?
Not Jermaine, but Wendy and Irish Mary have come back, yeah.
Okay.
So my idea there was, I wanted it to be like, these characters are living, breathing people, and, when you finish a book, they're still going about their business. So when you pick up the next book, you're able to say, oh, this is what Wendy's doing now, or oh, this is what Irish Mary's got to say. So, and also I just really like those characters.
Old friends.
So,
there's a moment where there's a gaggle of them on the bus together as well.
Yes,
it's quite a clever
yes.
device for bringing in different conversations.
Yeah.
Grand. There was another question here.
When I started reading the book, I think it was quite early on, I realised that you were going to have to introduce at least 10 characters, probably I thought as main characters, and I thought that was a really challenging thing to do, and I was wondering how you would do it, and I thought it was really good because it seemed as if each character seemed to get a chapter, and then suddenly we saw the characters not getting a chapter, so it was like moving away from just being one character and actually talking to each other, so they would be introduced themselves, but then very quickly they were introduced as in a relationship with other people. And I just wondered if that was on purpose and if that was a kind of a moving from these single characters on their own to these characters in community.
I'm going to, sorry, before you respond, just so everybody hears, I think online, because there's a different mic. So that's a great question, thank you. I'll do my best to summarise. There's at least 10 main characters in the novel, and initially sort of they each get their own spotlights in each chapter, and then they come together in the different connections. That sounds quite hard to hold, lots of different characters for a writer. So was that a deliberate choice, or how did you manage to hold so many at once? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Grand.
I don't know if I did, but yeah, it's the first time I've written of an ensemble cast, and I did find it really difficult. In fact, I think it was the most difficult thing about the novel. In fact, Lucy, I don't know if you remember, but I emailed you right at this beginning to say, I've got the plot, it's all going along swimmingly, but how do I introduce all these characters? And it was a worry. And it is a worry, to be honest, that, people will get to sort of chapter 5 or 6 and go, who is this now? Who? So the way I was trying to think about it was, the way you describe it is brilliant. I knew that I had to introduce them all in such a way that the reader would care about them, but I had to introduce them all enough before I could have them all acting together. And they please trust me, they do all act together, by about, I think it's about chapter 8 or 9. So how I was thinking about it in my mind in a sort of a very practical way, I don't know if they kind of do like a French plait, do you know what I mean?
Do them every day with
the
your
root
daughter.
plait, right? So you take one strand and then you bring it over, so that's one strand was my one character, and then you get the other side with the other strand, and then both strands come together. So in chapter 2, I've got two characters, first character plus a new character, and then I'm over on this side, and I've got chapter 3, I've got 3 characters, and so on until I had them all together. That's quite good, isn't it? I quite like that.
That's a lovely craft metaphor. We'll all remember that. Yeah. Tuggy with most of us to try.
But you're right that I found it difficult. It was the most difficult thing for me about the novel. And when it went through editing, I thought it was quite interesting that one of the things my editor said was, should pick on certain characters. We need more page time for this character, more page time for this character. So it is quite challenging to make sure that you're not going 3 chapters without who was that character. So yeah, I found that hard.
You could have cheated with a visual there, and that's it. Some would, but you've done the hard work of actually of doing all the.
Well, there is a wee visual in it actually.
No, but I mean with the links between the characters.
Oh, right.
Right. Like a family tree. Have you got a favourite character?
Yeah, Kevin is my favourite.
Gorgeous Kevin.
Gorgeous Kevin. I just really love Kevin. And in fact, Kevin, if any eagle-eyed readers from Ginger and Me, he made a wee fleeting appearance in Ginger and Me. He was a character on the bus. And he was a character who would sit in the same seat every day and press his face against the window because, and then kids would be shouting at him, "Oh, gorgeous Kevin, you should be a movie star." And I didn't really know what his story was, and I wrote him. I just had this image of this chap who was facially scarred and was being teased about it. So when I started to write Common Ground and I needed a variety of different characters, I just thought about Kevin, and so you get his backstory in this novel, and he's just a wee darling, Kevin. I just love him, and I had his really. Is this a spoiler? But he had a really nice, happy ending. So that kind of kept me going in a way because I really wanted to get to the end because I wanted to give Kevin this happy ending, and he gets it.
Thank you. I don't think you've spoiled anything there. But anything else coming in from online or the room? Yeah, go for it.
I'm not sure if your mic's working at the moment.
This one.
That one is, but the black one.
Oh,
What's in
apologies. Sure, should we share that
Yeah.
then? Okay. Oh yes, I can hear now.
I'll just pass it to you and you can read it out.
Thank you. Okay, so the question from Lena. Your work always has political undertones. Are there any fights at the moment that are inspiring you or perhaps igniting ideas for a new book? Great, thank you, Lena. I was hoping to ask something similar myself, but you've articulated that really nicely. Over to you.
I always find it really interesting when people say that I'm political. I don't feel as though I am. Except political in the sense that we're all political if we live in the world, right? Because we all have to engage in these things. But I don't see myself as a political writer. I don't feel as though I'm trying to put messages across. I feel as though I'm telling stories about things that interest me, and what interests me is the way human beings, I guess, move in the world. You know, the impact that we have on each other, the impact that we can have on the planet. That's what interests me more than specific political issues. I think Lena asked there about what I'm writing about at the moment. It is about something that is inspiring me at the moment, but this is something that really makes people either squirm and run away or be very interested, and that is religion. I'm quite interested in religion at the moment, and so I'm writing a novel about a young Catholic girl who, when we meet her, her sister has died, and her father is dealing with that by saying, "Oh God, why have you done this to us?" Whereas her mother is turning towards faith and looking to faith to see if that can help her. And the young girl who's the protagonist is trying to find her own way through that. So I don't know if that answers the question. I guess I'm just inspired by what I see, in the world, and what I'm experiencing, and what I feel as though other people are experiencing.
Thank you. This is quite a duet, isn't it, on our squeaky bar stools, passing mic back and forth. Well, churches are another third space, a civic space, essentially, aren't they? And that's something that's really at the heart of what you're doing. Do you also sort of, I mean, I mentioned the chats that are happening on the bus, and then there's quite a few that happen just side by side, people walking up the street. I can't help but feel that you must be eavesdropping on conversations day to day. Like, is that in your practice? You sort of scribbling? Yeah. Grand. Okay, well, before we reveal too many more secrets, are there any questions? Comments that got something online? Yeah, go for it.
Come through again and do the same thing. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, this is from Joe. Who do you think would play the characters of Common Ground in a film? Oh, that's a cracker. Thank you.
I truly hate that question because I don't watch TV and I don't watch films, so I don't know any actors.
Ask the audience if they
well, I don't know how many have read Common Ground yet.
Was one or two that knew the book, yeah. Well, we'll be the Central Scotland voices. Something to think about.
I think, if I had my own way, it would be completely unknown people, so they would have a chance rather than people who are already famous.
Got you.
Sorry, Joe. Rubbish.
But thank you. And there is a particular genre, though, isn't there? And you see it in film as well, of sort of like the band of misfits getting together. Sort of think Peter Mullen or like that type of character would be. Although I'd like to think of some older women, and given we've talked about Germaine and the role of women in particular campaigns. So right, well, we'll brainstorm that one together for when you set the film rights. Okay. Grant, have I missed anyone out in the room that's come in online? I'm looking to my lighthouse friends, not just now. Okay. Well, let me then come back and ask about. I mentioned that everybody's got their backstory, and some of them are quite. They are heart heavy. Some of the stories that people have had here. So I mean, I think the link between a lot of those backstories is loneliness. Is that fair to say? Was that conscious in your mind that you were going to find, I suppose, a sort of wearing down of the resistance to find help as well? There's a cracking opening sentence. We won't just read out the opening sentence for us, actually, because it's one of those things as a reviewer or editor, something with a wee smiley face at the side. Like, that's a cracking opening sentence.
Jermaine
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Jermaine Henslow's father had raised his only daughter on a robust diet of baked potatoes, Sunday night baths, and the Hounslow family motto of an enemy a day.
There we go. It's good, isn't it? So that's telling me a few things, not least inheritance of traits, as you know, and stubbornness, and the sort of, I think there's a Scottish thing there as well about sort of a sort of I don't know, put this as sort of like there's a determination, but there's also a modesty. You know, the Sunday night bath, baked potatoes. He's this like humble fare of goodness as well, and that comes through. And so there's two characters, a couple who are living a much more sort of flashy, kind of put it like that, lifestyle, you know, and they're and that becomes a tension in their relationship. Did you have loneliness as the connecting theme between those relationships?
Not specifically loneliness. I think all my fiction is very character driven, and for me, what I'm always aiming for is just an authentic description. So there's all different characters, but I'm trying to make each one as authentic as I possibly can. And I think that is quite a responsibility for a writer of fiction, because, you know, if you think about how we all get a sense of ourselves, a sense of our place in the world, where we get that from is from our exchange of ideas and feelings and experiences with other people. And, you know, that can happen in real life if we're lucky. You know, if you think about, I mean, I've got a friend who, you know, she and I were diagnosed with the same illness. And when we talk, you know, and she tells me her experiences and her fears and her worries, I'm able to say, oh, I felt like that, or that happened to me. And you know, and vice versa. And that's a very validating thing for both of us. And it allows us to sort of give a shape to, you know, the problems that we've got. But I think that can also happen in literature. You know, I think that readers can come to a book and see a character and say to themselves, oh, that's like me. I feel like that, or that's happened to me. In fact, I know this to be true because when Ginger and Me came out, I had a lot of neurodivergent people get in touch with me and say how much they loved Wendy. And in this book, there's for example, there's a character who is a carer for somebody who's got early onset dementia. And I was very conscious about not making her a saint. I wanted to make her somebody who, you know, she gets impatient with him when he repeats himself. She gets angry that this role has been thrust upon her. And I think that's really important, because if somebody who is a carer comes upon that character, I want them to be able to say, oh, that's how I feel. You know, and that's very validating for readers. So, you know, in answer to your question, what sort of is the common factor or the common denominator of all these characters? It's I hope, or what I want it to be, is that they're authentic, you know, and they've all got different experiences, they've all got different issues, but I've tried very hard to sort of inhabit their heads so that it's an authentic description.
Yeah. Thank you. And with that authenticity, they're flawed as well, which I think makes them a lot more likeable. Something else that I think is, you know, brings a bit of humour is, and you mentioned when you were first introduced to the real View Park allotments that stood out, all the personalised sheds. You know, why is there not just one really decent shed with all the tools and all the good chairs? No, everybody goes away and, like, you know, shuts the door and Curie's round their tiny kettle and they're like, it's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? Like in this, like, you know, shared space, why there's so many individual sheds. Yeah, I've never had my own shed in a common gardening experience. But there's a safety maybe about that as well, isn't there? So you're literally breaking down the barriers when the doors open and the tea and biscuits get shared.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think most people, you know, for all we do like to gather together, we then like to withdraw and, you know, have our own space again. And safety, I think, is part of that.
Right, I've been told there's a question here from the live stream, and that's probably going to be our last one of the night. Thanks.
So I think this is from someone you might know, from your friend Anne.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hope it's an easy one then.
Hello, Anne. Hi, Elissa. you've written 3 books with another in mind. She does know you.
Yeah.
Does writing and the ideas get easier or harder? Cheers. There you go. It's probably our last
You know,
of the night.
it's quite funny. People say, because I've published 3 novels in 4 years now, and people quite often say, gosh, you're prolific. And I think, well, no, because I'm 58. So, you know, it's not prolific over that period. But what I will say is, as the ideas, the more I'm writing, I think the more it leads to more ideas. So I don't think the writing of them gets any easier, but I certainly have loads of ideas. I mean, whether they're any good or not, I don't know, but I certainly have lots and lots of things to write about. So, yeah.
Thank you. What a note to end on. I think there's quite a few writers in the room tonight. We'd all agree that 3 books in 4 years is a phenomenal amount of hard work, and frankly, going to help the rest of us out with that. So hearty congratulations. Common Ground has been planted well and truly in the world, and may it blossom. And we're all going to stick around for a drink and a chat if you can. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
you, Elissa.
Thank you.